Hey, what's up you guys? It's Simon. Welcome back to my channel. So if you couldn't tell already by the title, today we are going to be reviewing Parkoo's dual tip 80 count alcohol markers. I am so excited to review this. If you are a relatively recent, but like if you are a past fan of this channel, you know I have reviewed their permanent markers and I really actually enjoyed those, and so they contacted me and asked if they could send over these markers. And again, just like last time, this video is not sponsored by Parkoo. Every opinion that I'm giving you is my own, but these markers were sent to me for free. They're just not paying me to say anything about them. So yes, thank you so much to Parkoo for sending me these markers. I'm super excited about it and I cannot wait to review them for you guys. So if you're not familiar with my marker reviews, generally I will do swatches of all of them. I will do a blend test and I will do a ink test to compare them to Copic markers, because those tend to be the industry standard. So that is what y'all will expect out of this video, and then I'm also going to be doing an illustration of them. So let's get into the swatches. Okay, so before we get super deep into the swatches, I just wanted to say I am like incredibly pleased with the fact that they actually included a hex chart for swatching. They included a hex chart for swatching and for seeing just the range of colors and which ones are going to look good together. So I'm really impressed by that. I have never seen a brand include a swatch chart before. You know, I've tried Copics, I've tried Ohuhu's, and obviously Copics you can download one online, but this came straight up with the markers and on some relatively nice paper. It's kind of thick, it has a little bit of a tooth to it, so very excited to start swatching these. I can't wait to see how they all look together. So my camera may have died partway through filming this swatch session. I'm not 100% sure. I just looked up at my phone and it was black. So if you guys missed most of the swatches, I apologize. Anyways, so before we get into the blend and ink test, I just wanted to give sort of my first impressions upon, you know, swatching all of the colors. And the first thing that I want to mention, because it was something that shocked me almost immediately, was the gold and the silver. I don't know if I can get this on camera very well. I hope so. But I think the gold and the silver are actually metallic. I'm not sure if it's focusing. I'm trying my best, but I think I'm just shaking you guys around. But trust me when I say that the gold and the silver markers are actually metallic, which is a huge shock to me, because obviously other brands have done gold before. For example, oh, I'm knocking my markers everywhere. This Copic marker. Let me see if I can get that in focus for you guys. This is a gold color. It is essentially a very like goldish green, and it is not metallic at all whatsoever. But the gold and silver in this kit are actually straight up metallic. They do need, I would say, about 2 passes to be able to get the full extent of the shimmery shininess that they are. And they do eat up the paper a bit, which is kind of upsetting, but honestly I feel like it's worth it. I feel like with a bit more practice I could probably make it so that it's not eating the paper, but mostly I'm just impressed that these are alcohol markers and they are glittery. They don't smell very bad. Like, for example, Sharpie Metallics, I believe are some type of paint marker rather than an alcohol marker, but these are just straight up alcohol markers. They are no different from the rest of the ones in the set. So that is really amazing to me. I'm really impressed by those two markers. The next thing I want to mention is I really enjoy the packaging of these markers. I really like this big old tote that they come in. Each marker, it's hard here, let me zoom out so you guys can see. Each marker has its own individual slot, so you don't have to worry about all of your markers getting mixed around if you are traveling, and it's just very convenient. You just snap it up, and then there's a little handle for you to carry your markers around. So if you're someone that likes to like go to cafes and draw, or if you like to take your markers when you're going on like a holiday or something, that is really nice. And then they are like kind of triangular shaped, so they don't roll around your desk. Well, they roll a little bit, but they don't roll as much as per se a Copic Chow. Let me get a Copic Chow. A Copic Chow is just gonna keep going, but these have a more triangular shape, so unless you're really knocking your markers around, they are not going to slide around too often. And then they have these little grippies at the end, and I think they're cute. Here, let me see if I can focus on them. Yeah, they just have these little like ridged edges, and I think it's adorable. I do really like the packaging. I like the font and everything. It's like nitpicky, you know, but I like the packaging. It's very cute. And then the last thing I have to say in regards to the packaging is that a lot of the markers actually do match the cap color. The only one that I was really disappointed and, well, not disappointed, but like shocked by the color difference was actually this wine color, which is why I say I was disappointed, because I was the most excited for this color. As you can see, it's a very like reddish purpley, it will not focus. It's very reddish purple, like true wine color. And on paper, it's a little bit more like browny red, which sucks, because I was really excited for that deep, like rich, reddy purple, but it is like more of a brown. But for the rest of the colors, even like the neons and such, I feel like they all matched the cap very well. And yeah, it just altogether looks like a very nice, neat chart. I am impressed by the amount of browns and or skin tones that I can use, just those very nice earthy tones, because comparing to Ohuhu, obviously, they didn't have a lot of those. And actually, so I actually wanted to compare these as well to the Ohuhu 80 count markers. I particularly have not used the 80 count markers themselves, but I have used obviously Ohuhu before in both their skin tone and their brush tip original set. I believe it's about 49 markers or so, but I just wanted to look on Amazon and kind of base that comparison off of the listings and what I know about Ohuhu as a brand in general, and it looks like the original 80 count Ohuhu set also does not have very many skin tones. It looks like they might have a few lighter ones, but generally they have their problem where it is significantly more orange. I feel like in a lot of the colors that would be considered skin or mid tones, they are again very orangey. And I also wanted to compare them price-wise. So the 80 count Ohuhu markers, which are dual-ended just like these, they have the fine point and the bullet nib, or not bullet, the bullet and the chisel nib. The 80 count for Ohuhus are $39.49, and the 80 count for the Parkoo markers are normally $36.99 but are currently on sale for $29.99, which is really dope. So it's the same amount of markers for almost $10 less, and they also again have more skin tones. And then just for funsies, I wanted to compare them to a 72 set of Copic markers, which we all know is going to have a fat price tag. It's going to be disgusting, so give me a second to pull that up. I imagine it's going to be somewhere around the 300 range if I'm not mistaken. Yep, $340 is a huge price tag. It is definitely a lot of money for Copic markers. So if you're looking to get around the same amount of markers and a decent color range, I would really recommend checking these markers out. So now, oh, almost forgot. One more thing before we get into the blend test is I wanted to mention that because these markers are a little bit chunky, it makes it easier to control the bullet nib, but I feel like it's a little bit harder to control the chisel nib, and also the chisel nib is huge. It's a big honking boy, and they're very juicy, which is nice to some extent because it does, if you are somebody who works in a very large scale, mean that you cover a lot of area and don't use as much ink because, again, they're juicy and they're huge, so you cover a large area faster. But also, if you're someone who works a bit smaller and you do want to use the chisel nib to cover, like, say, your base of the skin tone, it's going to be a little bit difficult to control that chisel nib because it's huge. I tried to use it for some of the swatches here, and then I immediately switched back to the chisel nib or not the chisel nib, oh my goodness, the bullet nib, because it's significantly easier to control. I know I have mentioned before in the past that I am never going to use bullet nib markers, but they are actually surprisingly a lot easier to control than I thought they were. I'm very spoiled when it comes to brush tips because that's what I started out using, but I am aware that a lot of brands like Ohuhu, like Touch New, like Art and Fly and what have you, all are regular users of the bullet nib. So if that's not something that scares you like it scared me because I'd already used brush nibs in the past, they're not as scary as I thought they were going to be. So I would definitely recommend giving these a try. So now let's see how they blend. So again, very quickly, for the people who are not oh my gosh, my brain just froze. For the people who are not familiar with my marker reviews, what I'm going to be doing is I have 3 separate circles that we will be using to determine which of the 3 brands is better at blending or mixing or blending ink to see if any of them come out on top. I will be comparing Copic, Ohuhu, and Parkoo. So they are 2 similar price ranges and 1 very expensive price range. And then I will also be doing a dry and wet ink test to see how much the ink smears depending on obviously how wet the ink is. And yes, so I will not be doing the ink test between Copic and Ohuhu because I have done a review on them before. If you'd like to see that for whatever reason, you are welcome to go and check it out in my channel, but it's there, so I don't want to waste your guys' time comparing these two since I've done it before. Okay, so now we're going to get into the blend test. Okay, so here are the results of the blend test. So I do want to mention first that as I was holding the Ohuhu markers and using their chisel nib, I kind of realized that they are of similar size and packaging. So if you have used Ohuhus before and the idea of a fat chisel nib and thick marker bothers you, it's actually pretty similar to Ohuhu markers, so I wouldn't let that discount you guys on getting the Parkoo markers because they're actually a very similar feel. It's just been a long time since I've used Ohuhu markers outside of the previous review that I did. So in with the blending, I don't really see much of a difference between each of the brands. Obviously, all 3 of them are alcohol markers. They all perform very similarly. I didn't notice that I was having a particular issue in blending the Parkoo markers, which is not something that I can say for the Blick markers that I reviewed in the past, but again, these are very nice to use. Something I did want to test out that I have not done in previous reviews is I kind of wanted to see how it would react in blending 2 colors that are somewhat dissimilar. So for that, I wanted to try out, I believe it was, what was it? I believe it was 88 and 10 because they are still the same color range, but the colors are a bit further apart. They're similar to each other on the hex chart, but obviously this is more of like a pinky red, and 10, which was, I believe, the darker color that we used here, was obviously, again, a bit darker. So I wanted to see how those would blend because with Copic markers, it is kind of easy to get 2 non-similar colors to blend, but I just wanted to see if I could do it with the Parkoo markers as well. And there is a bit of a line, but I am pretty happy with how that just turned out, because it does look like there is somewhat of a smooth gradient. It is pushing it, and again, you can see the lines, but it's not totally horrible. So I am pretty impressed with that. So now I want to get into the ink test. So what we are going to do is we are going to take this, I believe it was the 10, and we're going to scribble over this dried ink, and I'm seeing absolutely zero smudging whatsoever. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's probably only had about 5 minutes to dry, and that is just straight up not a single bit of smudge. So if you let your line art sit for a bit before going into the actual illustration, you're gonna go pretty well. Like, this is, I'm trying to layer this up, and I'm really not seeing any smudging. So very impressed by that. I believe I did see some smudging with both the Copic and Ohuhu in my previous video on the dry ink, so that's pretty bomb. Now for the fresh ink, we always do a thicker layer and then a line. And again, this is ink, obviously you can tell I just placed on there. And I believe there's a bit of smudging on the thicker area, but again, the lighter one, the line, no smudge. That's crazy. I've never had a marker smudge absolutely 0% before, so that is definitely very interesting. I'm very pleased with that result. So now what we are going to do is I'm going to do an illustration using purely these markers and see how that all goes. So getting right into it, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the illustration before we, like, you know, talk about the overall markers, just because I really like it. I've been feeling pretty art blocked lately, so I decided to do some sketches, and I just got the idea to do something that was just very, like, dreamlike, with lots of clouds and pastel-y colors. So I made like this pink and purple and blue hair ombre and gave her, like, I feel like a sort of wondrous expression, I hope. And I also decided to give her heterochromia just because there's this image on my Pinterest board. I believe it's either on the portrait studies or the eyes section, but there is a girl with heterochromia and she is very beautiful, and it's not something I draw very often, so I decided to incorporate that as well. Okay, so thoughts on the markers. I, of course, love them. I want to reiterate that again, Parkoo is not paying me to say anything. This video is not sponsored by them. They just sent me the markers. So again, thank you to Parkoo for sending them to me. Everything that I'm going to be saying to you guys is my own honest opinion. So yes, I do really like them. I think they have an awesome color range. Again, I feel like the only thing that's really lacking in this set is like the oranges and some of the lighter skin tone range. But what is available, I feel like, is a really nice dark to mid-tone range, which as far as any affordable brand I've seen before hasn't really done too well. I also really dig the fact that these markers are super affordable even when comparing them to other affordable brands like Ohuhu. My only genuine complaint I really have is that I feel like the chisel nib is a bit too broad. I like that I'm able to fill large areas with it, but I had a harder time trying to control the nib to get to the ends. If that makes sense. I don't know if you guys can see it yet, but I had this issue particularly around her shoulders when I was first starting. Not so much on the edges of the face, but mostly just around really rounder areas. So I switched over to my bullet nib, and the issue with this is that with any alcohol markers, especially ones that are quick drying like these Parkoo markers, means that areas will dry and occasionally you'll have hard edges or streaks where you can see where other patches have dried first, or that you have to go over a few times. So there's a little bit of patchiness when it comes to larger areas of color, and this isn't an entirely big issue if you draw on a smaller scale, because obviously you'll have to cover a smaller area, but you'll also cover it much quicker, so you won't have to worry about getting that patchiness. But if you draw on a larger scale like I did for this illustration, you might want to keep this in mind and probably do your best to work quicker with these markers. But this is also the same with any alcohol markers. I just feel like it's especially in this case because these do not have brush nibs, so you can't really fix those hard edges, I feel like. Other than that, I feel like these markers are pretty up to par with professional brands like Copic and like Ohuhu. They're really only missing the brush nib, although I understand that for a lot of brands like this, the lack of the brush nib is what helps keep these markers affordable. And like I mentioned before, in the blend test, using the bullet nib was not as horrible as I thought it was going to be. There were some times where I went outside of the lines and had some issues, but that's purely due to my inexperience with bullet nib markers. So if you're used to them, this likely will not be an issue and you'll likely really enjoy these markers. Alright, so you guys should be seeing a close-up of the illustration here very soon. I hope you guys like it, and if you do, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to subscribe to see more of my art. You can also check out the links in the description where you'll find links to all of my social media as well as the link to these markers. I want to give a quick shout out to my patron Elise Thompson. Thank you so much for continuing to support me every single month. If you want to get a shout out alongside awesome people like Elise, you can check out the Patreon where you'll find wallpapers, coloring pages, and more awesome stuff here in the future. I also want to say thank you again to Parkoo for sending these markers. I love them and I love you guys. Thank you so much, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!